Welcome to the podcast, folks. Let's dive into a fascinating take on CSK's evolution for IPL 2025, focusing on how retro roots are set to spark fresh success.
Absolutely. There's an air of nostalgia mixed with innovation here, right?
Exactly, and um, it's like it's like they've taken a page right out of their storied past while still embracing the modern game dynamics.
Yeah, I mean, look at the way they've built the squad. There's a staggering number, a whopping 9 players, who've worn the yellow before, which is pretty impressive in such a constantly evolving format.
Right? And it's not just about clinging to old traditions. It's about stirring in that reliability. You know, stirred, not shaken, has always been that undercurrent guiding their strategy.
hmm That consistency has definitely, yeah, been key. But I do wonder, isn't leaning on retro roots somewhat risky given how the game's evolved in this new impact sub era?
That's an interesting point. And in many ways, they're trying to restore that home advantage that used to be so dominant at Chapak. Coaches like Fleming and Hussey even noted how standardization has eroded spin's impact.
Right? And with their recent expenditure on 2 spinners, Ravichandran Ashwin and the up-and-coming Noor Ahmad, they're clearly betting that conditions can still, yeah, favor their classic spin strategies at home.
Precisely. And it's almost like a strategic gamble, tapping into that vintage charm while hoping that gradual changes in conditions don't completely undercut that edge.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of Noor Ahmad, he's an interesting choice. At INR 10 crores, he was the costliest signing on their radar during the auction.
Yeah, exactly. For a 20-year-old left arm wrist spinner with solid T20 credentials, he stepped onto a big stage where he could easily rise to mainstream prominence, maybe even join ranks with guys like Rashid Khan.
And yet there's been a healthy dose of chip on the shoulder sentiment around the camp. The pitching conditions need to, really play to his strengths for him to turn potential into actual game-changing performances.
Absolutely, and it's not just Noor Ahmad. Look at Sam Curran, a player with a point to prove. He's had phenomenal domestic success, with back-to-back 100 trophies and a breakthrough T20 100 last season. Yet his international fortunes have, well, dipped a bit lately.
Yep, it's a bit ironic. A guy who was once the player of the tournament at a T20 World Cup has seen his value drop in the auction before CSK swooped in for him at a relatively modest INR 2.4 crores this cycle.
Right, and CSK seems to be banking on Curran finding his form as a middle-order batter again. If he can rediscover that spark, he could be instrumental in not just CSK's campaign, but potentially even in a broader rebuild for England's setup.
Yeah, it's that delicate balance between legacy and current form. And speaking of legacy, the whole CSK philosophy has always been about continuity even amidst major changes.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Even though the format and the mega auction dynamics have been churning out fresh faces, CSK's core remains a well-oiled machine. It's interesting, ranging from youngsters to seasoned veterans like MS Dhoni being part of this mix.
And yeah, that veteran presence is something that often gets overlooked. Dhoni's influence, even indirectly, has been a guiding light for players like Gaikwad and Jadeja.
True, and it seems in the Ruturaj Gaikwad era, they're ready to build on that experience. Gaikwad, as the mainstay, is expected to lead by example, mixing modern flair with the nostalgia of old-school CSK.
Which, honestly, brings up an interesting contrast. On one hand, you have this comforting consistency, and on the other, the urgency to adapt to new batting strategies like the top-down, knives-out approach that they pioneered in 2023.
Absolutely. And while that aggressive batting approach was revolutionary, it did come with its own set of challenges. Some critics argue that such aggression might backfire without a robust support system from spin, especially in those middle overs.
I can see that. And the stats even back it up. CSK's spinners managed just 5 wickets at home last season with a high average.
Right. The economy was decent at 692 runs per over, but when it comes to making breakthroughs, deeper penetration is needed. Gaikwad will be looking to get more out of his spinners to ease the pressure during death overs.
And that's where the retro strategy, focusing on tried and tested methods, comes into play. They're effectively saying, hey, remember how spin used to control the game at Chipok? Let's try to recreate that magic.
Exactly. Though I have to add, It's a bit of a calculated risk. The modern batting landscape is so different now. A lot of teams, like Mumbai Indians and others, are already optimizing for these new conditions.
Right, and while that's a bold move by CSK, it might also attract criticism. Some could argue that too much reliance on the past might hinder innovation rather than fuel it.
Sure, there's always that counter argument. Should you say stick to what worked before or fully embrace the evolving dynamics? And here, CSK seems to carefully tread that line, blending consistency with subtle evolution.
It's like they're saying, we know our strengths, but we're also not afraid to take a few calculated risks.
Very well put. And if we look at their upcoming fixture buildup, playing 4 of their first 6 games at home, it's clear they're banking on that environment to, set the stage for a strong campaign.
Right. Starting at Chepauk gives them both a psychological and tactical advantage. But then, the tricky run-in with 3 away games could, however, test their adaptability.
Indeed, especially trips to places like Bengaluru and Ahmedabad. Aren't those conditions completely different from Chennai?
Absolutely, and that's a potential Achilles heel if the team doesn't adapt its strategy. But with leaders like Gaikwad and a mix of experienced players, there's a lot to be optimistic about.
Exactly. And while the tendency might be to lean heavily on the retro comforts, the inclusion of dynamic young players like Noor Ahmad is what's going to keep things fresh.
Right, that blend is crucial. It offers a bridge from the cherished past to a promising future. Although, I do wonder if the faith in retro strategies might, at times, blind the team to evolving nuances in T20 cricket.
That's a fair challenge. There's always a risk that clinging too tightly to traditional methods might hinder experimentation. Even so, CSK has, time and again, demonstrated that a balance can be struck.
And speaking of balance, the planned playing indicates a cautious approach. The mix, Ruturaj Gaikwad, Rachin Ravindra, Rahul Tripathi, Shivam Dubey, and the rest, reflects both trust in past performances and hope for a new dawn.
Exactly. And the clever part is that even if there are changes mid-season, rooted values like continuity ensure that they are always adapting rather than overhauling.
Yep, and that foundational philosophy has, after all, contributed to their rare playoff misses. A mere 3 out of countless seasons.
Right. That's a testament to their long-standing reputation. Bringing in strategic players, keeping a blend of old guard and emerging talent, and looking to regain some lost home ground magic, altogether, it's a refreshing, albeit nostalgic approach.
Certainly, it's a high-stakes blend of nostalgia and innovation. And while there are some valid reservations about over-reliance on the past, CSK's careful balancing act might just position them as the dark horses in IPL 2025.